Hello and welcome to the Cutie Art Crusaders, episode 107 for July 22nd, 2014. Now that we've hit the hundreds, this is much harder to say, but I'm going to go with it. My name is Rainbow Plasma. I'm the organizer and this week's editor of the podcast, and today I'm joined by...
Burn-to-One, the special guest coordinator.
And I'm Atmospark. I do the questions and the DeviantArt, and today I'm doing Flutterguy's job.
Apparently, you were a bit weirded out there because there was no Flutter guy in between.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's not here today. He's off doing some fluttery guy stuff.
He's off at his cottage.
That's right.
Like he has been a lot this summer, and unfortunately he couldn't manage to make it this time. He didn't have enough time to record, but that's fine. So it's just the three of us.
Yes.
Yay.
And we're all better off for it.
Wow. Jeez. 1 minute in and we're already harshing everyone's mellow. Oh my god. Anyways. I'm sorry, future Ted, who has to listen to this on the live stream. Jeez. Oh, man.
So rude.
Okay, so there's a couple things we want to talk about before we want to jump into the art today, and we'll go through them quickly because we got 4 or 5 things. So first of all, and most importantly, I put up a little poll on our DeviantArt page to talk about the state of our YouTube videos and where we're putting out our episodes. We put up a poll and we got some responses back, and you guys can still go vote on that and leave comments and stuff like that. It's really good if you guys could go and do that. But I think what we're gonna start doing is we're gonna start putting our YouTube videos on our channel, so that you can go to our channel and you can have our episodes there. And yeah, so from now on we're going to be doing that, and we want to see what kind of feedback we get from that, whether or not people like that or not. And you can go and you can subscribe to our channel, and then you can get our stuff right into your subscriber box and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So please let us know what you think about that. And the YouTube channel is youtube.com/cutieartcrusaders. So yeah, you can go there and subscribe if you want to see stuff like that.
I'm also going to be posting a lot more content to there personally.
We've always kind of considered that the place where you can go to get like all of our content, all of our video content. So whether that be, our episodes now, or if Byrne wants to do some stuff, I know you're planning on like recording some critiques.
That's what I wanted to plug actually, was going to be doing a new little segment where I basically do short video critiques that I'm going to attempt to keep under 30 minutes, preferably like 15 minutes.
Right.
So if there's anyone who would like something like a video critique of their work, if I feel like, there's something that I could share that people could learn from, I would definitely be interested in.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got stuff to do with like the cons that we're doing. Basically we're pushing the YouTube channel. I think it's a good idea for us to start really pushing that. So it'd be great to have some support from you guys over that, and hopefully putting our episodes on YouTube will garner some support for that, because then you can go there for all your Cutie Art Crusaders needs. Cool. Yeah. Also, while we're on the topic, something came up while we were kind of talking about this. So we put up the poll, and I put up a journal just kind of talking about considering putting our YouTube videos on our channel. And I heard some misconceptions. I had a conversation back and forth with a lot of our fans, and I overheard some kind of misconceptions that I thought I'd clear up. So I made a little journal about it, and just to really go over it really quickly. There's 5 kind of misconceptions that I noticed, and I thought it would be good to just kind of air them out here, because I am a firm believer in being very open about things. There's no secrets here. So first of all, we're not leaving EFN. Our decision to put things on certain YouTubes or whatever like that, that's completely separate from anything else that we do.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. It's irrelevant. So, that doesn't change anything. And that brings me right into my second point. The second point is that we're not touching the live stream. Again, no matter what happens, the live stream is really, really important to us. And we know it's really, really important to a lot of people who manage to be able to come out to it. So, that is a huge point for us that we would not change. And so, don't worry about that. The live stream is definitely going to stay, because we know people love it, and we really enjoy it as well. Third thing is, you guys notice that we don't swear on this podcast, or at least we try not to, and if we do, we edit it out. we're not forced to censor ourselves. We're not sitting here going, oh man, I wish we could swear, but we can't because of, EFN or XYZ reason. To be as open as possible. They when we first started, they said, can you keep it PG? But that was already our mentality walking into it. So it's a non-issue because we've already made the decision to be PG and to not swear, and that decision stands today. And that is, irrelevant to the fact that EFN also did say, hey, can you keep it PG? Fourth, we don't have a contract with EFN, so they don't have any say. We haven't signed anything. We're not committed to anything. It's all all voluntary back and forth. They have no say in our content and stuff like that. And finally, we don't make any money. But I think a lot of people who've watched the show understand that we don't make any money off of this. We do it because we love to, and because we want to continue putting out fun stuff like that and interacting with you guys.
Apparently, there's people who are willing to throw money at us, though.
Hey, just because we don't make money doesn't mean we're not open to the idea. But currently, we don't make money off of ads or
CAC
off of anything like that.
advertisement entrepreneurs. Look out for that. No.
Yeah. So yeah. Those are some 5 misconceptions there that we posted on a journal on the Cutie Art Crusaders DeviantArt account. So if you want to read more there, or if you have any other questions about certain things, again, I'm a very firm believer in keeping things as open as possible. So if you have any questions, then we're an open book about the handling of our podcast. Anyways, that was my spiel. So I think Byrne, you had something to talk about as well.
The tumblers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We mentioned a little bit in passing last week, but Ted and I are starting we're starting up some tumblers to force us to draw, to inspire us or keep us motivated to draw. And I started one called Crappy Pony Doodles, which is apparently a name of, what do you want to call it, controversy. There's a bunch of people who are like, oh, Crappy Pony Doodles, like if we submit to them, does that mean we're bad artists? Like that? No, what's wrong with you people? It's a name, man. It's a funny name that I had selected because I don't know, I got giggles and laughs out of it, mate.
Yeah, and I mean, that was the whole point. Is like everyone can submit there. It's a nice place to do that, and it's to encourage people to get practice in.
Yeah, and some of our regulars actually have submitted stuff, which is pretty cool.
Byrne, you never put up my stuff.
You eventually posted it.
Yeah, I know. I posted it for you.
Yeah, and so I try to post there daily and blah blah. And then Ted has also started one called an Applejack a Day, where he draws an Applejack a day, which is pretty cute.
Yeah. So.
And yeah,
I thought it'd be fun if we just shouted those out a little bit, because you guys are putting in some effort for that, and you guys are obviously working on motivation to get daily or at least weekly sketches.
I'm drawing for once. It's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah.
I'm like an artist or something.
That's crappyponydoodles.tumblr.com and an applejackaday.tumblr.com. So, enough about plugs. Man, it's like we're at the end of the show or something. There is one more thing that I want to talk about before we jump into the art, and it was just something that happened last week. As a little tangent, I mentioned that I knew someone named Geldshot like 2.5 years ago. That I had talked to for like a month or something, and I kept seeing him everywhere. I would go to Every Northwest, and I would see his name, but I'd never see him. I would just see his name everywhere I went, and it was a funny coincidence. Well, funny story is I didn't even know that he watched our podcast. But apparently either he watches our podcast or someone who knows him watched the podcast and told him, because he contacted me this week and was like, yeah, I totally remember you. So it's really funny that happened to come up. But hi, Geldshot. Maybe this will motivate him, if he doesn't watch the podcast already, to start watching.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Geldshot, I had dinner with you. Remember that? You remember that one time we were at dinner together? It was really fun.
Yeah, so I don't know if he's going to BronyCon or not, but maybe we'll have to do something there.
Yeah, we'll have to get dinner again.
That's funny. All right, well that's everything for the talking points. We're under 10 minutes. I'm happy.
All right.
So who's going to do the job of Mr. Flutterpants?
Me. I'll do it.
Okay, stepping up. Let's do it.
Okay, so on to the art then, I guess.
Yeah.
The first one.
Whoa, what's our theme, bud?
Oh, theme is doing Flora, or how about forest? Flora. Or forest.
Your accent makes it really difficult to discern that word.
Yeah. Leaves and junk.
Leaves and
Flora.
junk.
Yes. So that's off of the old Flora and Fauna. It's trees and forests and nature and
Forests.
stuff like that.
Stuff.
Yeah.
trees and forests and flora and stuff. And the first one we've got here is by Machinimator, called Spiral.
Hey, I just realized we've actually featured this artist before. I was just looking in the artist, or what is it, the view, like, other art in this gallery. This artist also did the hoof standing on bridges in the city, that, like, violet one we did in the color episode.
Yeah,
Was great.
and the
Really?
purple episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I don't really remember. I'm gonna have to go look for it. You guys start talking. I'm gonna go look for it.
I know it.
What? When we featured it?
No, like I don't know what piece you're talking about.
Oh, here, I will link it for you in the Skype chat. Oh, look at that.
That was a hint. Start talking, you bums.
Anywho, the title, Spiral. I'm curious to know if, like, I'm kind of looking at the composition to see if there's, like, a spiral going on.
There is.
And it's circly, but I don't know if it's, like, super spirally. I guess there is a little bit.
Spiraling at the bottom right, starting there, towards the left.
Yeah, I could see it starting, where, like, kind of where Twilight's at, from that rock, and then going up, and then into the background area,
Yeah.
and then, like, into the trees, and then stopping, like, going into that big tree.
Yeah, that's a really
Yeah.
interesting point, actually, because if you take a look at the right-hand side, I didn't notice this, but you've got almost like light rays or clouds or mist or something in front of that big bark on the right-hand side. And so that pushes it back and creates the spiral as opposed to the circle. Now, personally, it obviously it didn't really do it for me because I was the same as you, Bernd. I didn't really notice that it was a spiral. Now that I look at it closer, it makes sense to me, but I'm not sure if that's quite obvious enough.
I didn't see it at first, but
Well, I think partly in composition, you don't want it to be obvious. You know what I mean? Like, when you glance at something, you want the viewer to be engaged and, like, look at it, but you don't want to be what you're doing to be super, super obvious. Like, obviously, if you spelt out a big spiral, it would be a little almost gimmicky.
Yeah, but you also have to make it effective, right? And what we're finding here is that because we didn't see it initially, it didn't quite grab us enough. You know, like, oh yeah, definitely don't like throw it in their face, but it wasn't quite as effective as it could have been.
I could see that, but I'd still argue that it exists.
Yep.
Maybe just not in what I was expecting. I was expecting some kind of, like, golden Fabrici sequence. You know what I mean?
Right, golden Fibonacci.
Whatever.
Fabrici?
Whatever, man. I don't
The Fabrici
speak
sequence.
French or whatever he is.
I'm gonna Google Fabrici.
Oh, ooh, you know what this reminds me of? I don't know if either of you would know this, but in Adventure Time, there's this place called the Wildberry Kingdom, and where, like, Wildberry Princess lives, and this looks a little bit like her kingdom because she lives in this, like, big, huge canyon with this one big tree in it.
Okay.
And, like, all the bottom is, like what do you call the tops of forests?
treetops.
You know what I'm talking about? Canopy, right?
Canopy.
Canopies of forest.
Great.
Like, the
great
whole
choice
bottom of
words.
the canyon is just a big, like, canopy of stuff, which is kind of what this looks like.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to people like big trees. Wow, that's quite the sentence. But yeah, there seems to be this theme in a lot of things that I see where there's one big tree, and I don't know what the symbolism or what it's supposed to convey really, but it seems to be a really common theme I find, not just in art but movies and stories in general.
No, it's kind of an interesting trope. I did want to talk about stuff that this piece does really well, and then we kind of mentioned that one thing with atmospheric perspective and fog, but it does make it look like that tree isn't just like a tree that he drew, that it's actually big. And then a couple things that this piece has going for it to make it look really big is, one, Twilight's very small. Two, he has a very large crystal next to Twilight to give you kind of a size to that crystal.
Yeah.
And then there's two other crystals that kind of dial it back, and as they go back into the distance. So that size comparison makes it look really big. And then the other small trees that he has purposely placed in the foreground, going back and then look really small in comparison to the big tree in the background.
Yeah. So it looks less like Twilight's tiny and more like everything else is huge.
Yes.
I really like that. I like how the crystals kind of give that sense of depth and how far away something might be / how big something might be.
It looks like the tree from Avatar. It's huge.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, there's another example of one big tree. And you're right, Bern, there's often a canopy underneath it. And I think that a lot of the times the canopy is almost used in a similar way. When we see the canopy, we go, well, those are the tops of trees. And then this big tree is coming out of the tops of trees, you know? Imagine how much bigger it is below this kind of shield of leaves.
Also, those roots on like the sides that we're talking about that kind of help create that like spiral or wrap things around. Like the whole piece is itself is being framed, but there's kind of like that sub framing. But it's cool because of how receded the color is and how it's actually like this weird aqua green that creates like a silhouette like way in the background, making it seem that much more far away and that much more grandiose because it's wrapping around everything, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the atmospheric perspective as well. And while we mentioned it on the right hand side, it's also very prevalent throughout this entire piece, you know, and especially along the bottom, it's very misty.
I like the colors in this piece. Like, I mean, it's relatively simple. You've got like the major colors are like blue, green, yellow, right? And then there's some like browns in like the top and the bottom that kind of like mix in.
Yeah.
And then that random jarring purple.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the standout colors to me are the greens and the purples and the way that they interact. Obviously, there's a lot more colors than just those, but those are the ones that really pop to me.
I feel like it's a good palette, though.
Yeah, yeah, a really good palette. It's not too intimidating, not too saturated, but not dark either. It still feels like there's a pop to the colors.
It's for me, it's really that like blue in the background reacting with like the what is it? Kind of like the green of everything around it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of they like just kind of I don't know vibrate off of each other.
Yeah, I think there's something really almost instinctual within us because we see so many beautiful blue skies and green trees. You know, it's very familiar to us.
See that? Yeah.
I also really enjoy the lighting in this piece and the way that the rays are kind of drawn and implied in a way.
Oh my goodness.
It's really nice.
I just realized this piece is huge.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, it is.
It's like 4,000 or like 3,000 pixels.
I approve.
So you can really zoom in and see like the brushwork. Like when you're up close, it's super messy, but when you were looking at it on the DeviantArt page, like I was, you know, everything kind of comes together and makes everything look super neat. But like it's super brushy when you zoom in.
I like that a lot. I like the way that when you zoom out, you do get this general feel for the piece, and then you can have the option to zoom in and see it a little bit messier. I think that's everything we can talk about, unless you wanted to go on there, Joel.
No, that was me being scared in a silly way. It's okay. I thought my microphone was a spider.
All right, Australia.
You can't see me, but my hand is on my face in defeat.
It's all good. All right.
Last ending point. Twilight's very cute.
Ponies are cute, guys.
I like
Don't know if we
them.
knew that. Yeah. Moving on. Next one is called Legends of the Everfree by More Vespagnigas.
Oh my god. More
Vespagnigas.
It's like I believe that's the Venetian way of saying asparagus.
More asparagus, please.
I'm gonna Google today's the Googling episode.
We've actually, if you don't do that. If you remember, we've actually met More Vespagnigas at BronyCon. He had a booth. Do you remember?
No.
I definitely remember when I went to BronyCon, you jerk. I did.
Oh, that's right. We all went to Everfree Northwest.
Yes.
Never mind.
Yes, no, I didn't go to. I did not meet More Vespagnigas.
Well, hey Ted, you remember that one time?
Apparently, it's a StarCraft 2 reference. So, cool. Anyways, the thing that really stands out to me.
Oh my God, it's more Vespane gas.
Yes, Vespine gas. There we go. Cool. We got it. So the thing that really stands out to me in this piece is how, this is going to sound redundant, but how linear the lines are and how linear the brushwork is. Because we look inside this giant log and it's got very straight lines going down it. And even in the trees to the right-hand side, the bark is just like in one direction.
Mm-hmm. Very liney.
Yeah. And the same with the hanging moss too.
Yeah.
What it does is it creates this like awesome sense of perspective, because like I have mixed feelings about this piece in that I really like this crazy forest perspective going on and how like grand and huge it makes all of these like trees and big fallen trees seem.
Yeah.
And it physically like does, like you look at it and you're like, wow, that is big because of how it is illustrated and of all this like basically perspective lines going on.
Yeah.
What is that fancy word I used that one time? Orthogonal lines. Remember when we had the little argument?
Towards
that was
the vanishing
fun back
point?
in the days. Yeah, stuff like that.
Okay.
and then like all the
Yeah.
like the trees and the moss are physically like pointing upwards, you know,
Yeah.
towards another vanishing point in like the sky. So like awesome use on that. But I personally don't much care for the color palette used. I feel
Okay.
like it's almost weird or off-putting.
Interesting.
Just kind of like this weird, like kind of yellow olive.
feels
because
too
it looks
bright.
like to, because it looks like to me that more Gas is going for something really realistic and like really like painterly, but it's just like the colors chosen really detract from that for me.
Interesting.
So, I don't know. That's kind of like my feeling on it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, no, I think the interesting thing is that while there is a lot of color theory, oftentimes I find that color is very, very subjective,
Yeah.
which is really cool because I look at this and I don't mind it at all. In fact, I look at this piece as something that is very close to a traditional piece, but there's little things about it that kind of make it stand out to me as something that it does different. And one of them is like those like you said, those very, very straight lines, and they are orthogonal towards the vanishing point that is placed within the center of that log. And also in the color palette, it's just a bit different. I do like it. I've never been turned off by that kind of that kind of color palette, so I'm not too sure about that. But again, it's kind of preferential.
Yeah, no, I could totally see like how the color palette would be enjoyable. It's just like I'm comparing it to kind of like a realism sense, I guess. And I also see a common theme in the artist gallery, like in use of color palettes and how they are different. They're usually very light, and they all kind of they keep a common theme of how he uses them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I think pointing out that this piece is very light is a good point, because I think there's a tremendous amount of light here, and I think looking at the scene around us, seeing this and seeing the almost lack of shadows is quite it can be quite jarring, because we've got this. I'm gonna keep you a great word choice with canopy. We see the canopy above us, and it should be blocking out a lot of the light, but it's almost like it's even brighter than noon underneath all of these trees, which is kind of I could understand would be a little bit jarring.
I feel this one's. I said it a little earlier. Might not have been heard. It feels a little bright to be sort of forest.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to be underneath a canopy of trees, tree canopy, it's not going to be that bright. But the level of detail is amazing.
Yeah, it's the sheer amount of like brushwork and like brush strokes that it must have comprised to make this piece is crazy.
It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I don't see too much of a problem with like letting a lot of light in a scene. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's how you handle it.
Exactly.
And
like it's sure there's normally going to be a lot of light. It's not going to be as bright as this. It should be
Right.
darker.
Yeah, and I would say, I'm not sure how you feel about this, Bern, but I would say that the value of this piece isn't quite what I would expect.
No, I would say that this piece is definitely painted with color in mind.
Yeah.
And that being said, there is some awesome like analogous stuff going on. It's basically the whole thing is bloody yellow and green, and then he has a little accent of like blues around, like the Poison Joke and stuff, around who I'm assuming Zecora is. Yep, Zecora. But I wouldn't go far as to say that how like him letting light into his scene would be like a critique. Like if he wants to make it bright or light in this forest, like that's totally fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems kind of preferential.
But it's just like how, I don't know, how what's the word? I'm looking for a word. Is it tangible? Is that the word? Like tangible, realistic feeling, like tangible that we could see something like this in the real world. I don't feel that we could see something visually similar to this in the real world with the color palette and lighting chosen.
I totally
Does that
get
make
you.
sense?
Yeah, no,
and
I
if you want to
understand.
make it like bright, like I've totally been in forests that are super sunny and bright, because there's different types of trees that don't block a lot of light, like birches and stuff. Like they don't block like a ton of light up in the whatever, or there could be no trees behind us or like whatever, and like letting sun in. So like I don't have a problem with that. It's just the colors and stuff that make up this piece and describe it don't look like something visually similar that I could see in my life. You know what I mean?
Right, but what you are seeing is a lot of effort being put in to try and make it realistic with the detail. And I think
the
that's
perspective.
I think that's where the disconnect is kind of coming from. Anyways, I don't mean to cut you off here, but we should move on soon, and I wanted to bring up the log and the way that the vanishing point is used, if you don't mind.
I'll go for it.
So I thought this piece is really interesting to me because when I look at it, it's jarring for a different reason, and it's because these lines, these straight, fast, swipey kind of lines that we see, especially in the log, convey to me a lot of motion, which is not consistent with what we would see in the log, and I think it's really cool how it definitely immediately brings you in and sucks you in right down the middle of the log to that point at the end of it.
So to cut you off really quick, I like how you've been talking about it and that you're talking about what it does when you see it. Mm-hmm. It's just there's a concept with artists where they talk about stuff like, oh, it should be this way, it should be that way. I've been doing a little bit this episode, but how you mentioned like it has these lines and it creates this feel and it does this for you, like when you look at it visually. I don't know. Anyway, go on.
Well, I've always been really, really interested in how, one of the things that really interested me when we started this podcast and when I've learned more about art is how it kind of manipulate is the wrong word, but how it kind of draws the user. Oh God, programming for too long. It draws the viewer in certain directions, and how you can kind of get people to look at certain things the way that you do it, and how it affects the majority of people, and using these kind of tricks. And yeah, like I said, it conveys a huge amount of motion to me, and that's what's jarring to me. You were talking about how the color is a bit jarring to you, and how it doesn't quite mesh. To me, what doesn't quite mesh is how jarring the log is, and how it conveys so much motion, and yet we know from what we can see is it's perfectly still. And I sometimes really like that because I think sometimes you can play it a little bit too safe. And I feel like this piece doesn't really play it safe in that regard, because it goes for this giant, takes up at least half of the screen log with these swipey lines that convey motion. So it's jarring, but I kind of enjoy it because of it.
I think I've said everything I wanted to say on this one. You guys done?
Yeah, we're good.
All right, so we'll move on to the next one. Next one is called Simple Curiosity by Yakovlev Vud, who we have featured numerous times.
So, Bernd, I know you really like this piece, but I want to point out my absolute favorite thing about this piece first. And that is teeny tiny little sea pony Lyra.
Yeah.
There's a little tiny sea pony Lyra just under the water. And it's adorable.
Also a little harder to see, but there's also sea pony Scootaloo, Cheerly, pink pony I can't remember, and then another pink pony I can't remember.
Yeah, they're all like little
bottom left corner. And in the middle.
That's really, really cute.
So the major point that I want to make in this one, because we featured this artist before, and kind of what I mentioned sometimes when we feature artists is that they're really good at their medium or their program they use, and like really good at Photoshop. I forget how I put it. Just like Photoshop wizardry or usage or using the digital tools that they're given to their advantage.
Right.
And this artist is really, really awesome at using the tools given to him in the program he uses, which I'm assuming is Photoshop. Because you can tell when it's apparent when you really zoom up close and look at it in the leaves and the fauna and foliage or whatever, which is kind of the theme of this episode.
It's not fauna, it's flora.
Flora, excuse me, which is our theme today. And so if you actually zoom in and look on the trees, and this piece is a really big resolution, which is awesome, you can see that it's made with a digital brush. It's made with what I would probably call a Photoshop brush, what I'm assuming is one. And so the artist has really awesomely used this digital brush of leaves to create this tree above Fluttershy and do it really awesomely with a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different layers. Instead of having to hand draw out every bloody leaf, you know what I mean? Because that would be super painstaking.
Yeah.
Right.
He's used a digital brush to make these very realistic looking leaves very quickly. And then on areas like the bush that's coming out of the water, which is kind of cool, with little dragonflies on it, he's drawn highlights on the leaves, but it's like a digital brush. However, to controverse, I don't think is a word. Contrast that. The trees in the background behind everything, and so receded those silhouettes of trees, and then next to the little birds and the birches there kind of towards the middle of the piece as well, those are hand-drawn leaves, but they're more receded, so they have less detail because they're farther away. And so he's hand-painted those really messy and quickly with a really smart choice of like colors and like layering of colors versus using the like digital brushwork in the foreground. You know what I mean? Joel, anything?
No, you've pretty much said everything that I was going to say. With
Okay.
All right.
Then I'll go if you want.
yeah,
Okay.
I was waiting for you to go.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we didn't say everything for you, but something that really stands out. There's two things that really stand out to me, and I guess I'll go through them one at a time. The first thing is I love the very, very explicit separation in this piece between the underwater and the above water, and how that kind of separates the piece into like a 2/3 versus 1/3. It's not quite, so don't measure me on that, but
Yeah.
it separates them into non-symmetrical pieces, and it also completely changes the color of the piece. You know, up above the water, it's very warm. Even the cooler colors like greens are mixed in with a lot of oranges and yellows. The background sky is pink. Fluttershy is obviously comprised of warm colors. And then you have this very, very saturated blue under the water, and you've got the blues and the greens, and all of this kind of comes out and creates this colder feel, and it really contrasts against each other, but still manages to look really, really nice.
I like the way he's sort of very slightly blurred everything that's underwater.
Yeah, it's a really nice depiction of underwater. I think underwater is very difficult to do, and I think people are often afraid of making things too saturated underwater. But I'm not sure if people have ever seen underwater, but it's crazy saturated. Like I've gone like snorkeling and snuba diving and stuff like that, and
Snuba.
it's actually snuba. It's a similar to scuba, and it's really, really this turquoisey, like bright color, and it's really vivid, and it's really unlike anything that you've ever really seen before. I did that down in the Caribbean, so maybe that's just my experience down there, but it's beautiful, and it's so different from what we see above ground, and I think a little bit of that is captured in this piece.
Yeah, I can see that. I really like the sun rays. It helps with that feeling a lot because that's definitely something you would see when you're underwater, like the sun rays coming in from the left of the water, and also the like water shadows or whatever, what have you, on the right hand side.
Yeah, and the light rays that are coming in there. Yeah, it's really, really nice. And I guess the second thing I wanted to talk about was the style of hair that Yakovlev did for Fluttershy. Yakovlev does really, really good drawings of ponies. His pony work in terms of like anatomy just really clicks with me. And the interesting thing is that I wouldn't necessarily say I would know him as someone who would draw each hair individually. Some pieces he does, some pieces he doesn't, but I think this is one of the best examples of really, really well done individual drawn hair. It doesn't stand out too much, but it's noticeably different, but it still flows very well, feels natural, and is quite beautiful.
Yeah.
I really like Fluttershy in this one,
Yeah.
especially how he's drawn her. This is kind of like 3D ponies, and like drawing things 3D has kind of been like a controversy just between us as Crusaders, because I know Ted really, really likes 3D drawn ponies, and he's kind of attracted to that, where I'm almost off put by it and I don't like it.
And I'm in a similar way.
I really like Fluttershy in this one. I feel like this is kind of like the maximum detail of 3D that I enjoy, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And like realistic that I enjoy.
I would agree with you. Yeah.
And like
absolutely.
overly 3D rendering of horses.
Yeah. Yakovlev really does a good job with that. And I would say I'm of the same opinion, Bernd, where I'm not a huge fan of the 3D because there's a lot of things that can go very wrong with that. And so you have to be very, very careful to keep it kind of the same kind of artistic style that we're used to seeing with the 2D. And Yakovlev like kind of walks that line very gracefully.
Like if we're talking about artist scales, I feel like the next step up from here is like what is it, Harwick's art's work.
Okay, yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a reference for me right
Yeah.
now.
No,
So
I'm trying to think of just like a 3D scale, because like some of Hardwick's art's work, it's just so 3D. Sometimes I find that it's a little jarring, but he still has really, really good art, and he has a lot of pieces I enjoy. But like that's that little like a step up in 3D, just to kind of give people a perspective. If you
yeah,
want to go
just
check
looking
out
through his
some of
gallery, I would
Hardwick's art.
absolutely agree with that.
He's really good at rendering like realistic like 3D things of lots of things.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing in this that I've just noticed that I like is on Fluttershy, on her legs that are dangling just just above the water. You got that like the water reflection on her arms there, on her legs.
Yeah, great detail there.
Yeah, something you don't very often see, but in real life, if this were a thing, you would absolutely see that.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember what it was called, refractive lighting, because it's like refracting off the water, you know, like the term refraction. Like there is refractive lighting going down into the like rocks on like the base there, you know, like where the sun hits the water and it gets reflected and kind of like bent and stuff and made those wavy water, whatever. And then it's getting reflective and like onto Fluttershy as well, like you just mentioned.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Also the colors.
Yeah, of course there's a wide color palette that we talked about. And I think a lot of stuff, just going back a little bit to what he was saying about the refracted light there, there's just a lot of detail in this piece, and there's just attention to detail, and it really seems to me like he had a lot of fun making this and throwing in these little extra things, you know, whether or not be little sea ponies, or whether or not he was, you know, adding in that little detail there, or the birdhouse on the tree and things like that, or the little birds on the left hand side. It seems like all of these things in there really conveys a sense of like I had a lot of fun doing this, because I, you know, by the time I'd gotten around to drawing additional things, I was still having fun, you know, having so much fun that I was like, yeah, let's add fun things here. You know?
I feel like Yakovlev Vad is a artist who really, really enjoys the details. Like, he really revels in the small details of making up an image or a scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember some conversation, I feel like it was almost with like Pixel Kitties way back when we interviewed her, when she was talking about like all the little details that she makes up her world with, you know what I mean? And like that's what Pixel Kitties would really enjoy when she makes a scene or makes artwork, and she gets so caught up in, and she's like, you know, let's add like some flower pots here, some happy things, or like all the little details in the background to just
some happy
make
little
up
trees.
this world you're making, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway.
For sure. Great piece. I love it. I think it's great.
So we want to move on to the next one?
Yep.
Next and final one, which is called White Forest MLP by Aqua Galaxy.
All right, Burns, come at me, bro. Let's do it.
You gotta make your first point. That's funny because we were joking about before the podcast, where he was talking about like he made a point, and then I was like kind of started counteracting that point. We're like, wait, let's save it for the show. So we're gonna have like a duking of the Crusaders.
Point off.
So here's the thing. I know why I'm wrong, but I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it anyways.
I'm starting off on a good foot.
Right.
No.
So I'm gonna say it anyways so that we can get the entire conversation out. But I was mentioning that one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this piece is that I felt that the art piece used white as a primary color in it, as opposed to what we usually see white used as, which is kind of like a lack of color or like a space in the background. And it was fun to see it used as kind of oftentimes I feel like we see white as lighting only, whereas in this piece it's like the physical objects are white. And here comes Burns.
So no, I instantly heard that, and then like a little artist part of the back of my head was instantly like, nah man, like this ain't white, like this is all sorts of colors. And then I even went as far as to like open up in Photoshop and start like eye dropping stuff, just like, look, this one's purple, this one's violet, because like you're totally right in that it's like it's very light, and it's totally using a lot of white in the colors, if that makes sense. But like everything in the image is some other physical embodiment of another color. Like another piece that we had the similar conversation with is actually back in our color episode with Spirit, where we featured a piece by Blitz Pony with like playing in the snow. Do you remember that piece? And like the snow in the background was like rainbow colors. There's like all these colors. So it's like these trees in the foreground are like this warm peach and then like fade into a duller gray, but there's like blue in that gray. You know what I mean? And then like orange in that gray, and then like violet in like the bottom stuff, and then it starts to really come forward, and you can see like the violet leaves in the foreground, and then it recedes into that blue and blah blah blah. So it's like when you can see like different shades of things, it's never a shade of like just white and black and white and gray. You know what I mean? It's white and another hue that's really subtle. And that's what makes this piece so pretty, is it's like transparencies or light versions of hues rather than just like, you'll see often some artists, they'll use like a pure shade of white with like and just start fading that into gray. And then it's just like white and black and like white and gray. And it ends up really detracting from the piece. And you can visually tell that there's no like hue in there. Where in a piece like this, there's lots of hues mixed in with the whites, if that makes sense.
Right. And so I wanted to, because I was thinking of our response for a while now, and I realized what had really conveyed a huge amount of the impression that things were white in this piece. And the two things that really stood out to me were, one, the similarities between the character and the background. And the character in this piece is something that is very white, say, compared to the trees that aren't quite as white. But she's obviously very, very, very white. And so the comparison of her color scheme compared to, like, say, the trees around her led me to make the connection between the two, and therefore, to me, the trees were white. The second thing that I also noticed was that when I thought of what type of trees these were, I instantly started thinking about trees like birch trees. And birch trees to me are very white, and so it wasn't necessarily that the actual colors there were white, but it was the association of the objects that was white. And I think in a very similar way, you were mentioning the snow in our colors episode, and to me, I was looking at the snow and I was saying snow is white, and so that was my kind of mental connection. Even though the snow in the piece was rainbow colored, there was still this connection in my mind that's like, well, yes, but snow is white.
And I can totally see that, and that totally makes sense too, because like there is a lot of white present in a piece like this. It's just the colors that are also present in that white are extremely muted and very, very, very faint. Like I want to bring up another piece because it's good in conversation, and this technically puts us at 5. But if you look at this piece by Sea Maggot, it's still fits in our little theme, but except the flora's dead, or fauna's dead, or whatever.
Nice
but
segue.
It's has the same kind of play in like white going on, where everything looks very like white and gray. You know what I mean? Where I would say like I feel like you could also say like this piece was made with a lot of like whites and then like a lot of grays. But technically this piece is still very colorful. It's just the color that is present is super muted. Yeah. Like ignoring Fluttershy, obviously, because she's made of color, just looking at the background, there's like the place where color is most present is that very light shade of blue and kind of the water around Fluttershy and that reflective light around Fluttershy. But even in like the background towards the top, like way as things recede back, like it looks like white and gray, but it's just a very dull muted blue and like muted shades of like blue or violet. And I even feel like there's even a little red in there. It's so dull and it's so muted that it's almost non-existent, but it's still present in how like we see it visually, where it's not just white and gray, because if it was just white and gray, it would almost seem flat. If that at all makes any kind of sense.
No, I think it really does, and I think what you were talking about there about the subtleties of colors comes out even more in the piece that we're featuring, the Aqua Galaxy one, because when we look at this piece here, it's so surrounded in color that even it leaks onto the trees and into the scenery. The white, I guess it might be snow on the ground. Let's say it's snow, even if it isn't. Right? So the white snow on the ground is still got bits and pieces of these purplish leaves that are mixed in with the white leaves. So it still looks white, but it's got that color within the white. And the tree branches, while probably starting as white, have faded into the background, and that fade brings in the blues, and it brings in the teals, and it brings in the purples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely can see that.
But the thing that really interested me, not necessarily talking about the white itself, but I enjoyed almost the switch from the norm where we see this like white palette, maybe not white exactly, but this very, very light, very, very desaturated palette come to the forefront and be the actual objects themselves. Like the trees are actually white. It's not just the lighting, it's not just the way we're looking at it, but the trees and the leaves and the ground are all this very desaturated, this very this very white color.
It reminds me a
I
lot of
wouldn't.
some anime styling.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go as far to say that they're desaturated. I would just say that they're very light. They have a lot of lightness in them. They're very, they're very light is a good way to put it. Because in Photoshop you have lightness,
Yeah,
where it's like a white to black scale.
I was trying
Like,
to think
they
of
have
the right scale.
Yeah, because like if you
Lightness, HSL.
desaturate something, you're physically taking the hue out of it. Where like there's still a lot of hue present, but also a lot of white. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like you said, the hue is very dimmed,
Yeah.
which is where I kind of got the term
Totally. That makes sense.
lack of saturation.
And I would say it's safe to say it's snow because like the character has like little flower things and like there's icicles on like the hair and stuff, and
That makes sense.
just how cool all these colors feel together. Like their little bit of peach in the top makes it almost feel warm, but I'd say this piece as a whole is very, very cool feeling. Like all cool.
And there's a
colors.
very stark contrast between the foreground and the background. And I think that separation is really cool. And just thinking from a forest perspective, we've gone through a lot of this episode with greens and browns, and now we come across this piece where there is barely a green and not a brown to be seen. The green is mixed in with the blue, but obviously there's more blue than green in those teal colors. So it's really interesting to me to find this forest piece, which still definitely gives me a forest vibe, but is such a stark contrast from the traditional forest colors we would see. The color palette to me really stands out in this piece as being different.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's
agree. You have the Burns stamp of agreement.
Burn stamp of approval. Yes.
I agree as well.
Awesome. See, it sounds so much worse when you say that, because then it's like we don't care about your stamp of approval, but it's because Burn is so picky.
That's true.
But we
I am
love
picky.
him for it. So, speaking of things that we love people for, so maybe moving on.
You want to do that? Want to move on? Question?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I got a question here. I got the first one here. When you leave the fandom, or the fandom naturally trails off, do you see yourself partaking in another fandom as much as you are in the ponies? By I am not. Burn, you go first.
Fine. So we had a little argument before the show, and like we were picking questions, and like here's a good question. Let's throw this in here. And it was like I first read it, it was like when you leave the fandom or the fandom naturally trails off, and I was instantly like, nope, screw that question. Like I don't like that question. And then it sparked up a conversation because where I basically talking about this nature of question, and I don't like this nature of question. I don't like the concept of asking like, when this thing that you love and you do and you really enjoy stops existing or you no longer love it, where do you see yourself? What are you going to do? It's like, no, screw that question. Like, I'm living in the here and now. I'm loving life and enjoying myself. And that's like how I look at life, is to like enjoy and be happy with who you are, what you have, or whatever, what you're doing. And it's like, that's my outlook on life. And then you're like, hey, when you no longer are doing this thing you love, where do you see yourself? It's like, no, I don't look forward and see myself. It's like asking like, hey, I know you love your parents, right? And you love your family. Where do you see yourself when they're dead? Like,
It's like, whoa!
why would you
Yeah.
ask that? Like, I don't want to answer that.
Yeah.
But the question of, do I see myself partaking in another fandom? Like, sure, yeah, I love fandoms and stuff. I've always been a fan of Magic, but I still love that. And I'm a fan of ponies now, and I'm still going to love ponies. Like, there's tons of people who watched ponies in the 80s, and like, yeah, they weren't super crazy about 80s ponies for the majority of their life, but they still love those darn ponies. And like, nowadays that there's this like My Little Pony, it like reenacts that love. It's like, I'm never going to lose love for something. I'm never going to love this fandom less, but I could see myself being less active in it, but it will always be something that I have experienced and I will cherish.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And I think, yeah, I think we're in complete agreement there. Because yeah, I agree with you. I'm a very optimistic person. I like to be an optimist. I like to think up, and when times are good, don't think about when times are bad.
Yeah.
There's no real point in doing that.
I don't like that nature of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, to kind of answer the question, to give an answer, I'm a very passionate person. I jump from things and I go full force with them. So I would that's how I kind of work. So there's no question that I will keep throwing myself headfirst into things because that's what I do.
Fair enough. Probably for me, maybe. It's likely. I don't know. I've been getting into a few things recently, so probably. I guess that answers that for me.
Yep.
Do you have time for a second one? Yay?
Sure, let's do it.
So, okay. What is your favorite real game? Which means board games or card games. So something physical that's not a video game.
Yeah.
By Solid Boots, by the way.
What's your favorite game? So, I have to think about this, so someone else go.
Joel.
Bernd? We know your answer.
Think of one that isn't Magic.
One that isn't Magic? I don't have one that isn't Magic. If we're talking a generic board game that I've actually, or like board or card game that's not Magic the Gathering that I've played that I enjoy, I really enjoy Ascension, and I actually got to play that with Ted when he was here at Everfree Northwest, which was a lot of fun. We played with the Euro C Sucks guys. So Mummified Mustangs, you guys remember him from the show.
Yep.
And then Met, he's a fan artist of ours, and we taught Met, he like watched. And who else joined us? Was it Smooth?
Yeah, Smooth, and he's been on the show
Smooth
as well.
joined us.
And
so
Commander
Smooth,
Sparkle
Mummified,
was probably
Ted,
there.
and I. Yeah, he was watching too.
Yeah.
And we all played Ascension together, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I won. But it was fun.
Spoiler alert, I'm the best.
Yeah. Well, they were learning, and they know what they're doing, and then Mummified chose unfortunately the horrible tactic, and got crushed. It's funny. Ted did well. Ted did well though. He had a good deck.
For me, probably. Well, if we're going by how much enjoyment I get out of it, Cards Against Humanity.
That's a good pick. That's a really, really good pick.
Strong pick. Joel off to a good start.
Yeah.
Narrowing down the answers for you there, Max.
I can giggle my way into sleep with that game.
Yeah. I would probably agree. I'm not going to say the same answer because that's boring. I think it should go without saying that everyone on the CSC is a huge fan of Cards Against Humanity. But just for the sake of variety, I don't actually play a huge amount of them. I've been trying to get into them lately. There's a place in Ottawa that's just kind of opened up that's like a board game cafe. And it's a really cool place that you can go and just try out a bunch of games. And I've had a lot of fun just going and trying a bunch of games with people. So like playing a couple games of new things that I haven't tried or things that I'd heard about. So like I played like a game of like Settlers of Catan. And I'd never played that game before, so that was really cool. And I've gotten to see people play a lot of different games, and so it's really fun for me to try out new games and see how the game rules kind of work, because every single game works differently and in different ways, and it's fun to kind of learn those rules. So I don't really have one in particular, but I enjoy learning games, and that's kind of my thing.
Yeah. What was that game that Ted played in the tournament or whatever when you guys were at like PAX?
Carcassonne?
Carcassonne?
Was it Carcassonne?
I think it was Carcassonne, yeah, and he did a Carcassonne tournament.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. I'm trying to look up like pictures.
I feel like
it's Carcassonne.
I feel like if Ted were answering this question, he'd say Carcassonne or maybe Dominion. But to describe what Ascension is, it's kind of like Dominion, but you also, instead of just buying cards from that little center area where you buy stuff, it's now a center row of cards that flips off of a deck, and there's also monsters to fight, so it introduces a new mechanic. And also permanents, or cards that stay on the board, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
And so it's like a Dominion with a lot more depth. And so I enjoy Ascension a lot more. And so if you've never heard of it, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah. When I went to PAX East with Ted, and we were talking a lot about board games because he really enjoys board games. He talked about really liking Dominion. That was like his game. I'm not sure if that's changed. But he mentioned Dominion was like really his thing.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like back in college and stuff, you'd always play it.
Yeah, because like when we were looking around at the tournaments that were going on at PAX East, he was really looking for a Dominion one, and then he saw a Carcassonne, and he's like, yeah, I could do that. So yeah. And he he enjoys Settlers and that kind of thing. So
cool. So we're done with the questions then.
Yeah, we're done with the questions. Awesome. Okay, well, I guess that's that's everything for this episode other than the plugs. So
okay, so you want to do them now?
Plug away, my good friend.
Plug away. So we have a DeviantArt account, which is cutieartcrusaders.deviantart.com. We also have a Facebook page, Cutie Art Crusaders on Facebook. We have Twitter at Cutie Art Crusade. We have a Gmail account, which is cutieartcrusaders@gmail.com. Tumblr, which is cutieartcrusaders.tumblr.com. And we have the YouTube, which is youtube.com/cutieartcrusaders.
Okay, so, like, you can see it on the screen, so it should be fairly straightforward there. Most of the usernames are the same.
Yeah, I feel like we should just super quick turn the plugs into something like ridiculously quick. Just like, here's our plugs. We are Cutie Art Crusaders on everything here, with the exception of Twitter, which is at Cutie Art Crusade. Like, that's the plugs, because it's on the screen. Like, and I think we link it too in the description.
True. It's true. There are certain instances, like I feel like this week, where we should talk a little bit more in depth about the plugs, because we were mentioning the YouTube page at the very beginning of the episode. So I'd like to remind people that
YouTube's a good one.
Yeah, I'd like to remind people that we have our YouTube page now, which we're going to be posting episodes to. So you can definitely go check us out there if you want to subscribe to us and see all of your CAC content in one kind of place. That'd be the place to go there. So. Again, we're kind of pushing for that, so we'd love to see some support for that. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
That's it.
That is everything. Well, Flutterguy317, aka Ted, will be back next week. Next week, we have something, don't we, Bernd?
We do something very special. So I'm actually really, really excited for next week, because we have a very special guest, which is out of the norm for us to actually finally have guests for once, because we've done like all this 100 episodes. Anyway.
Well, I mean, we did have those like 6 weeks in a row where we had guests.
Exactly.
And then Assassin.
Oh yes, which was a great episode. But anywho, so next week I'm very excited. We do have a special guest planned. For next week, we have
great! What a great! I
love
Begugh.
I keep like repeating myself. And it annoys me because I keep catching it, because I'm all like excited and like a little fangirly. But next week on the show we have Saoshin. There we go. Also known as Eric Proctor, who is an awesome artist on DeviantArt, and he makes some of my favorite fan art, and we featured him quite a bit. And I really look forward to doing an interview with him next week. And he will also be at BronyCon, so we get to see him there again. So look out for Saoshin there at BronyCon, and he will also be at Otakon as well.
Whoa! Doing the plugs for this guy before you even
Dude, I am.
We don't even have an episode.
So people know yet. It's like right on his DeviantArt, man.
Holy cow! Yeah, Saoshin's. I think most of us here are fans of Saoshin. He does a lot of great pony work, and he does a lot of great non-pony work as well. And so it'll be really exciting getting to talk to him. It kind of came out of left field, but it's a really awesome opportunity. All right. Well, that is everything for this week, guys.
Very honored.
Hope you enjoyed this episode. I think it went really well. I had a great time. This was an awesome episode. So without further ado, whether or not you're on the live stream or on YouTube, we love you all the same. My name is Rainbow Plasma.
My name is Bird01.
I'm a Spark.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.